Welcome, everybody, to another QB Power Hour. Today's topic is Save Time with Accountant Tools. My name is Michelle Long, and I am a CPA, have my own practice, Long for Success, author of 5 different books. You can check those out online or on Amazon, as well as we just updated the QBO practice set. So if you want more practice with QuickBooks Online, go check it out on Amazon. We updated that a few months ago, earlier this year, so you can check that out. There's the link to the Facebook group that I just mentioned. We'd love to have you guys join us out there on Facebook. It's very active. There's also a LinkedIn group as well. So we'd love to have you join us at either one of those. And Dan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Dan DeLong. I'm the owner of DanWith. I'm a former Intuit technical support trainer, really proficient in all things in the QuickBooks ecosystem and services. Right now, I'm just on my own, and our goal is to transform businesses through technology. And so I'm really pleased and happy to be joining Michelle every other week here to help out with that.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Dan. And Dan is a great partner. I really enjoy having him, and glad that he's part of this with us as well. So a couple of details about QB Power Hour for some of you that might be new joining us. We do QB Power Hours every other Thursday for the most part. Sometimes we take a Thursday off, like around Thanksgiving or Christmas or QuickBooks Connect or other things that might get in the way, but for the most part, it's every other Thursday. Our topics are not just QuickBooks tips, but also, things that are what's new and troubleshooting with QuickBooks, but we also will be covering marketing, value pricing, third-party apps, and more. Topics to help our accounting professionals succeed in their business. And we've now started doing some things which Dan came up with the name, and I love it, niche nuances, or niche, depending on where you're at. It's like tomato or tomato, niche or niche.
Exactly.
But thank you, Dan, for doing one last week on wait, what was last week? 2 weeks ago. Construction?
Yeah, it was
construction. So very good. So thank you. And then here's the links. And so you guys can go ahead and bookmark these so you always have them. But the first one is for the PDF of all the slides for the year. So we put those in there. So if you miss a webinar and you go back and you watch it on YouTube, you can also go back and get the handouts as well. Go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel when you're there, and you'll get an email when the recordings have been uploaded. And yes, I need to get all these past few recordings uploaded. I will work on getting that done, if not this afternoon, tomorrow. So that's one of my priorities, to get those updated for you all. So I'll get that out there as well. So our agenda for today, so this is where, Dan, we were trying to talk about what could we do in QuickBooks this time, and Dan came up with the idea of the accountant tools. And it really hit home because I was telling Dan, I was just presenting a few weeks ago doing the core cert, and we were down in Texas and all this. Anyway, one of the certifications, or several of them actually, I would ask the attendees, how many of you use Reclassify Transactions? And I was amazed how many accounting professionals did not know about the Reclassify Transactions. And so when Dan said, let's do the accountant tools, I thought that was a great idea. So what we're going to talk about, I'm going to cover and demo some of these: Reclassify Transactions, write off invoices, and undo the bank rec. All of these are in QBO as well as QB Desktop. And then Dan's going to cover in QB Desktop how to log in as the external accountant user to access it in the client's QuickBooks, as well as some of the details on the client data review tools. There's like 13, I think, if I remember right. So Dan's going to cover some of those. And some of them he might just mention. So anyway, we're going to be covering both QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. So first of all, the Reclassify Transactions tool, and this is the one I was shocked that people didn't know that it was out there yet. And let me go ahead and just launch our first poll question. I'm going to ask this one. Do you use the Reclassify Transactions tool either in QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online, or both? Because like I said, I was shocked when I would ask this group of people, and we had, 75 to 100 people in these training events, and less than 5 people, and one of them raised their hand that they've used this tool. And the desktop version of Reclassify Transactions has been out for 10 years. It came out in 2009. It's crazy, isn't it? And I was telling Dan, I was part of the team that helped create the Reclassify Transactions tool. So, of course, I love it, and I'm just shocked that some people still have not used it.
Yeah, it
Dan,
happens
go
to
ahead and share your story.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us, right?
Yeah.
I was telling Michelle, when QB Online Accountant first came out, and I was on the pilot team of support. I was my son's Cub Scout master, and we were using QuickBooks Online to track the finances of the pack. And I had forgotten to assign a class to all of these sales receipts for like popcorn sales or something like that. And I was going through them one by one, reclassifying, adding in the class. And after about the fifth one, I was like, man, it'd be awesome if we had oh my gosh, we do have a tool to do this. And I went in and fixed it, and it saved me a lot of time, but I even forgot about it.
Yep. All right. I went ahead and closed the poll. 73% of you said, yes, I love it. 24% said, no, I didn't know about it. So you guys are in for a treat, because you're going to learn more about this Reclassify Transactions tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just pop into QuickBooks and show it to you and explain it as I'm showing it to you. So I'm in the sample company, Craig's Design and Landscape. You all can go into the sample company and play with the accountant's toolbox and play with this tool as well. But in order to get to this, you log into QuickBooks Online Accountant. And when you're on your client dashboard in QBOA, on the far right column, if you click on the gear in the far right column over there, you'll see where it says sample company. Because if you just go in through the QBO test drive, you won't have the accountant tools. So if you want to play with this, you need to go into QBOA and click on the gear, and in the far right column, click on sample company. So under the QBOA, when you've got your accountant tools, because the client doesn't have this. Goodness gracious, they make enough mistakes without something that can allow them to change a whole bunch of things at once. So under the accountant toolbox, you're going to see Reclassify Transactions. Now, this has recently been updated to give it a new look and feel, and it's better, and it aligns some of the boxes were not aligned properly, so it has been improved lately. So just to remind some of you, and tell some of you that don't know about it, you can look at accounts for either the P&L or the balance sheet, so you can choose which accounts you want to look at, which basis, and which period of time are you looking at, because usually we're looking at it through year end. But, this is a sample company, so we don't have anything out there. So if I just type an R, oops, what did I do there? That was not good. Type an R, and it will pull me to the end of the year. I can put in for the whole year, because usually we're reviewing stuff. Usually it's at the beginning of the year, doing last year's, getting it ready for taxes. But I encourage you to do this maybe on a quarterly basis with your clients. And what you're going to do, and I'm going to scroll down here to some of the expense accounts, you're going to scroll through, and you're going to be looking for things that are misclassified. Because we told the engineers and the programmers, we told them at year end, what we have to do is we look through a detailed P&L or a detailed balance sheet. We look through all the transactions, looking for things that are posted to the wrong account. They're misclassified. We need to move them to the right account. So what we're doing is we're reviewing them by clicking on the account over here, and we're taking a look and seeing if things look correct or not. So for example, let's say fuel. Now, I've got, 5 or 6 of them here. Let's pretend that instead of being a fuel account, it should have been an automobile. So what you can do is you can select all of them or just individual ones. And then when you click Reclassify, I want you to notice what's going to happen. So look over here. Notice automobile is almost $114. Okay, so automobile is $114 and fuel is $349. Watch what happens with one little click of my mouse. Are you watching? You ready? Here we go. Bam.
The anticipation.
Oh, darn. They changed it. I forgot.
Yeah.
Automobile. All right, now here comes the click. You ready? 1, 2, 3, bam. It moves all of them over to automobile. Notice now fuel is gone, and it's all in automobile. Remember, that was about 114 before. So you can reclassify. I did 6 there. We don't have a whole lot of activity in the sample company, but imagine if you had 20, 30, 50 transactions in the wrong account. Instead of, like Dan said, double click on it, open it up, save and close, double click, open, save and close. You can reclassify them in one fell swoop. So if I go over here to automobile, now you'll see we've got more transactions out here. What I usually recommend that people do is sort them maybe by name, either by customer name or vendor name or whatever it is. So you can put all of those together. So like if I wanted to do the Chin's gas and put all them back over to fuel, you can select them all. Once you sort them and put them together, it will make it easier to find those that are misclassified and put them back into the right account. All right, so let's put it back into fuel and move it. Bam, one click and it moves them all back there. It captures that on the audit log. Here's automobile, so you can see we're back to 114 and the 349. So it does show on the audit log. It will show you, well, let me just show you that really quickly because that's important too. In the audit log, you can see, let's filter for today, and we want to see all the transactions. So in here, you'll be able to see, oh my goodness, where's everything in here is Craig. I want to find those that I just did. All right, here we go. Edited Chin's gas. So if I click view, so I'm going to click to compare, and this will show me what it was before and what it is after. Show the changes only, and you can see the account changed. This is the last one I did, from automobile back over to fuel. So you can see that quick and easy. So I absolutely love that. Now, if I had to, or if I wanted to assign a class to transactions or change the class, like let's say, like Dan was, doing the popcorn sales or whatever. Let's say you needed to move things from class A to class B. You can also change the class. So if I went in and selected a bunch of transactions, so let's just say I choose these. When I say reclassify, if I had classes turned on, instead of saying change the account to, you would also see, you'll see 2 options, change the account and change the class. So you could choose which class you wanted to change it to as well. Now notice this doesn't include locations. And everything I'm talking about here is the same in QB Desktop. You can do these things in Desktop as well, okay? So somebody wanted to know, how did I get to the audit log? Under this big gear up here on the top, the big gear under audit log. And here's a funny story, not this time, but once time before when I was in Dallas training, some gentleman came up to me on the break and he puts his arm around me. He says, "Hun, you're in Dallas now and there's a wagon wheel." I said, "Oh, okay. You can call it a wagon wheel. Up in Canada, they told me they call it a cog or a sprocket." And I tell people you can call it whatever you want, but in the training materials and on the certification test, that's the gear. And we usually call it the big gear because on the top of your list, you have a little gear or the grid gear down here. Okay, so anyway, that's how you got into the audit log. Now, we also had some questions about which transactions can you, does it show? And so this is where I was going to show you, and I don't see it now. Let me go into some of my income. I'm not seeing the dots in this new reclassified one. For the items and things that can't be reclassified?
Yeah, I think it just doesn't even show the transactions that can't be reclassified.
Okay. Yeah, they used to give us like a red, yellow, and green. And so for some of the things that can't be reclassified, like let's say I'm on an invoice and it was using an item. When it's got items involved, you can't do the reclassify tool for the items. You can go into the items list and change. Oh, somebody's telling me it's on the balance sheet accounts. Thank you. But I still don't see it on this new. On the new one, I'm still not seeing the red, green, and yellow dots, but items can't be reclassified. Also, Dan, correct me because I may have forgotten or misremembered this or whatever. It seems like the source account can't be changed. So like, let's say I wrote a bunch of checks out of my savings account and the checks should have been through the checking account. You can't change the source account. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, that's still the case. You can do that in Desktop though. it does allow you to do that. The other thing is payroll transactions. Those are specific, types of transactions, and those aren't going to allow you to reclassify anything about those. That would be a journal entry.
Yeah. Okay, and somebody asked, how do you select them? Right in front of the transaction, you see the box right here where you can select them. Okay, so you could click on that. So, and somebody says the item reclass will be great. Do you see it coming soon? No, probably not. But if you want to change your items and what account they are mapped to, you can go into your product or services list or your items list and change it there. It will change it moving forward on any transactions from today forward. It doesn't change. Wait, now I'm confused, Dan, because it does on some of them.
Yeah, you'll get the option when you change an account on an item to affect all historical transactions or just from that day forward. Desktop has the ability to choose a date in between. So you can say the first of the year, for example. I see that being rolled into QuickBooks Online as an option. It just wouldn't be part of the Reclassify tool because you're dealing with another list that's got other lists attached to it. So it's almost like a third dimension that you're trying to do. It's not just two-dimensional like the expense accounts directly on a transaction, on an expense transaction.
That's right. Thank you, Dan, for clarifying that. So what I did is I went in and I edited an item. I changed the account because you don't see this until you actually change an account on that item. Once you do that, then you'll see also update this in historical transactions. But you have to be careful because it doesn't look at the closed period. Like Dan was saying, in Desktop, you can say as of January 1st, 2019, update from then forward. You can't specify a date. So when I check this right here, it's going to update everything, all of those historical transactions, including closed periods or years. So that's something to be aware of too. So hopefully that helped a lot. And so yeah, and I wish that they would update that. Like Dan said, I hope that comes soon. Okay, so let me now show you. So that was Reclassify Transactions. It is in Desktop as well. And Dan's going to be demoing some desktop stuff in a little bit. But let's also talk about this write-off invoices tool. And this is covered, what I'm going to tell you in write-off invoices, it's covered in the advanced certification training. I think it's module 3 under special transactions or special processes. You might check it out there. But when you go in and you want to write off invoices, you can say that you want to write them off as of a certain date and let's say less than $500. So usually your date might be through year end. I just went ahead and put today in here. So you choose how old of an invoice are you looking for and less than what amount that you want to write off. You could just select all of these. It's going to show you here's all the invoices that need to be written off. You say preview and write it off. You can take a look at them and say, yep, okay, write it off. When you click write off, this then is going to create a discount on the invoice to make the invoice 0. So it's going to be the date of the invoice, so you can't control your date. And when it does a discount on the invoice, it's not adjusting sales tax payable. So if you have invoices that are old from a closed period or a prior year, or you have invoices with sales tax on them, what I recommend you do, use this list to find the invoices that need to be written off. So like, let's say Freeman Sporting Goods. I might click on it to see the details of that transaction. And there it comes. It's just kind of slow reacting to my clicking today. So I can see I have some items that are taxable out here for this invoice. So I don't just want to write it off like normal. So what I would do is I would have, so here we have this invoice that we need to write off. I would go into another tab, because remember we can have multiple windows open by using tabbed browsing. I didn't mean to click on invoice. I meant to click on credit memo. So what I would do is I would have the invoice open on one window, and let's pull this out. and slam it over there. So I've got the invoice on one screen. Now mine's little because I have it on just one monitor here. You have the invoice that needs to be written off, and then you have a credit memo, because this allows us to control the date of the write-off. If you want to do this as of 12/31, you can control the date of the write-off, and then down here, I don't think we have it set up in this sample company, but you would have a bad debt taxable and a bad debt non-taxable, so you can write those things off, and that way it will adjust the sales tax payable for you. Okay, so it will help adjust the sales tax payable in that situation. So pull that out, do your tabbed browsing, and use that list to identify which ones should be written off, but then actually go in and do a credit memo. And that is in QB Desktop as well. There's also a write-off invoices there as well.
Yeah, the big thing about that is the date too. Is that you know, if it's in the last, you know, especially if it's in a closed period, the writing off of invoices in online is going to affect that date that the invoice happened. So doing the credit memo allows you to be a little bit more in control of when those things are impacted.
Right, very good. Somehow I lost all the rest of my slides. I only go to slide 6 here. So that's okay, though, because we were getting ready to pass it to Dan, and I don't know what I did, but I will have to go find that. The other one that I was going to talk to you about is undoing the bank rec. You can undo the bank rec in QBO. Let me just pop in QBO and show you that, and then we'll let Dan take over, and I will see if I can find out what I did with the slides. So under reconcile, and there was a screenshot in there. When you go in and you're reconciling your bank accounts, and let's see, hopefully, well, I don't think any of these have already been reconciled. Let me look. No. All right, well, let me just tell you, and you've got this in both desktop and online. When you're viewing the reconciliations here, you'll see the history of all the reconciliations you've done. You go over to the oldest one over here, and you click on that drop-down list, and you say unreconcile, undo. And it will undo the reconciliations, all of them in one fell swoop. So let's say you go back 10 months, you click undo, and it will undo all 10 months of them for you. Now, Dan, in QuickBooks Desktop, you used to have to do them one at a time. Is that still the case?
No, if you choose one, you know, from a while ago, well, yes, you do need to kind of peel back the layer, but and that was an advantage of QuickBooks Online. Now that you do mention that, yes, so you do have to do them just one at a time. Yeah,
that's what I thought. So that's one of the things I like about QBO. But again, that's one of the reasons why we don't let the client do this. Like, the client cannot undo the bank rec because they can undo all of their bank recs in one little click. So anyway, so Dan, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll question again and ask you all, which version of QuickBooks do you primarily use? Are you using QBO, QuickBooks Online, Desktop, both? Another accounting software, or which one are you using? So kind of let us know where you are on that. And then Dan is going to take over on the desktop stuff and demo stuff for you as well. And somebody pointed out, and this is great, in QuickBooks Desktop, when you have the invoice open, there's actually a little link at the top that you can click on to create a credit memo from the invoice itself. And Christy, thank you for sharing that. Yes, that is there in Desktop, and it's not there in QBO. So we're covering some of this some of the differences here for you. Somebody wants to know how to do tabbed browsing. I will put a link to you in just a minute. I'll put a link in there to watch that for you in just a minute. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and end this polling question here, and I'll share the results with you because it's kind of interesting. So a third of you are on QBO, 24% desktop, 43% are on both. Oh, good, Dan. Look, we have nobody using other stuff.
There we go.
Since it is QB Power Hour, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It does.
All right, Dan, go ahead now. We can see your screen.
Okay.
So we can actually, we can see the slides now, so thank you.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to talk about the accountant tools in QuickBooks Desktop, and I wanted to talk a little bit first about this whole concept of the external accountant, and because when this screen comes up, typically it's been my experience. Either you disregard this message and just say no, or you mark put the check mark of don't show this again, and that's the last you see of it, because it's always a nuisance message when it comes up in one of your client's files. But the external accountant is a user type. It's a defined user type. It allows you as an accountant or bookkeeping professional to separate yourself from the admin. A lot of people like to log in as the admin itself, but in the audit trail, you're gonna anything that you do as the external accountant user is going to be separated from the admin. So when it comes to, well, who made this change? If you're logged in as the admin, you're never going to see that as far as who made that change and be able to specify that. One thing that really appeals to me about the external accountant is that you can utilize a lot of these tools on your clients who are not on the accountant edition, right? So if your situation is such that you they send the file to you, or you're using the accountant's copy process, that's not what we're talking about here. This is when you're logged into their computer, or you're at their location and they're using Pro or Premier, some version of QuickBooks that doesn't have these client data review tools already in it. If you're set up as the external accountant, you can now access a lot of these tools right at your client's location without taking their data and putting it in your accountant edition. So setting yourself up as the external accountant will allow you to access those. You do need to be able to have a Pro Advisor Desktop membership, and then it's going to ask you to sign in to be able to access these tools eventually. But setting yourself up as the external accountant is the best way to go. You almost have full admin rights to be able to when you're logged in as the accountant. So changing company preferences, those types of things, you can have your own login. So it's allowing you to be separate and still have the access to the tools. Let's see, next slide. How do I?
And Dan, I just might add that that I love that feature, and that was from a lot of people requesting, hey, I'm not always using the QuickBooks Desktop Accountant Edition. Sometimes I'm using my client because we're logging in remotely, or maybe you're on site at the client. And so Intuit listened to our feedback, and they made that available for us. So I think that's awesome. And somebody else was just asking about something, and I answered in there how to submit feedback to Intuit, because they really do listen. So you click the gear and send feedback to let them know some of that stuff.
Yeah. Now the client data review tools itself, this is some of those things that I ended up, in the accountant support team, I ended up explaining these things more so than guiding people to use them, because again, like you were saying, a lot of people just didn't even know they existed. But the client data review itself, it allows you to provide a moment in time without closing the books. So if your engagement with your client is such that you review their books on a regular basis, maybe it's monthly or quarterly, maybe even annually, it allows you to provide that moment in time, and then it kind of puts a bow on things. And then when next time that it comes time to review their data or their books, then you can now see what changed a lot faster than some of the other ways of doing reports and things of that nature. So it gives you tools to see what changed, and also tools to fix. And this is not moving on me, so I gotta advance my slide this way here. So I gotta view. So I can
At least you have your slides. I don't know what happened to mine.
Right. So the first tool that I want to talk about is troubleshooting account balances and lists. So I'm just going to move this out of the way here. So when we go into the client data review, which is under the accountant menu, you pop in. I'm just in the sample company, so of course the date's in the future, so things, just bear that in mind, so we're not a time traveler. Troubleshooting a prior account balances. So this is one of those things where it puts that moment in time, and it takes a lot of guesswork. What did the client do when I wasn't looking? You know, I just turned around for a second. How did this balance get all out of whack, right?
So, it's amazing how they do that, right?
Right. So when you finish a review, it will put a moment in time, and the troubleshooting account balances will show you the balances from that date that you did the review. Then it will have the balances in the client's file, and then if there is a difference, it will give you the debit or credit difference with a way to quick zoom on it to find out what transactions were part of that. So it brings up just the transactions that were modified during that not say a close period, but just showing during that time after the review was done. So in terms of other things that are in QuickBooks, so like the reconcile discrepancy report, where it just itemizes out the things that have changed since that last reconciliation. Same thing here in troubleshooting the prior account balances. And then also another tool is the reviewing list changes. So chart of accounts, items, fixed assets, and payroll items, if any of those had changed since you did your last review, that will be itemized here. So in this case, the items, this particular item was changed. The parent was changed. So somebody made it a sub item of itself. So anytime that something was added, deleted, or merged, that's going to itemize that out for you and make things a lot easier. Since the way I kind of explained, sometimes you come to a client's books and you feel like that police officer who's now in an intersection wondering, okay, how did that car get up in the tree, right? And you have to do a lot of detective work. This takes a lot of that detective work out for you and gives you those clues so you can figure these things out a lot faster. Now, let's see, our next thing is...
So Dan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Before you move on, so first of all, we got a lot of people that are excited about this, and they're like, "Oh, great and awesome and stuff." So that's good. But I have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
So when they're logging in as the external accountant user to access these tools in the client's QuickBooks, they have to have a desktop ProAdvisor membership, right? Not just QBO ProAdvisor?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
and now what's available in Enterprise? Because I think these are in Enterprise, aren't they?
Yeah, so the client data review tools is already in Enterprise, so that you don't have to be an accountant user to use these tools.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
So, oh, wait. I think I had one more.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, I got it. Never mind. Sorry. Carry on.
All right. Now, there's a lot of tools that are designed to fix for in the client data review, and Michelle talked about a couple of them, about reclassifying transactions and writing off invoices. Those tools are there in the desktop client data review as well, and they're accessible not just by going into the client data review, but also in just the accountant menu itself. When you hover over client data review, you have some of these tools right there as well. So I wanted to itemize or just kind of look at some of the things that are desktop focused in the client data review tools. This fix unapplied customer payments and credits and fix unapplied vendor payments and credits is a lifesaver for a lot of folks. What this does is it allows you to just like it says, fix things that were entered in incorrectly. So when you have a client who received a payment and then but never applied it to an invoice, or something along those lines where they just didn't connect the dots between their invoices and payments or bills and bill payments. They wrote a check to the vendor, for example, and then put it to an expense account. This will allow them to connect those two. So you would just select. So here's an example. So this one has a check. We look at the check. Okay, it's set to utilities, and then he has a bill also that's more than likely set to utilities as well. So we've got overstated expenses just in this scenario. So this will allow us to just check these two and then apply them. I'm just trying to double check the date here and who it's to. When we save it, what it does then is it automatically then applies the payment to the bill, and it changes the expense account that was on the check. So it doesn't undo your reconciliations, it doesn't change anything about that, but it just applies the, now it's just going through accounts payable instead of both of those transactions impacting the expense account. So it does that for customers as well as vendors. So if you had that type of situation with a payment and an invoice, or a deposit and an invoice, that's going to not go through accounts receivable, but now you're double stating your income. This will allow you to do the same thing there.
Okay, Dan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have several different questions.
Sure.
What if there's no matching payment for the bill?
Mm-hmm. As long as it's got the name on it, then and it's not applied, it should show up.
Okay,
so,
even if the amounts were not the same, in your example, the amounts were different.
Right. So it just needs to have the name. And
that's where you can match partial payments. You can, if you made partial payments on a bill, you can match that to the bill.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's lots
showing all the open transactions, right, for that name, like you said.
Right. It shows you, checks. This, as long as that name is on it, then they'll show up, and that it's looking for that particular type of transaction. So a check, because a bill payment check is going to is a specific kind of check. So it's a check, but it's a specific kind. So it's going to be looking for checks that are written, specifically to, patent hardware that aren't bill payment checks. So if it was a bill payment check, if you see a bill payment check in here, then it's just a matter of it's not applied to something. So it'll just have an open balance on that particular transaction, and then you can apply it.
And so we're getting questions about how do we do this in QBO. So in QBO, you open the check that should have been a bill payment check. All you have to do is then change it to apply it to that bill. When you open the check, usually on the right-hand side, if there's an open bill, it will slide out in that drawer, and all you have to do is click to apply it to that bill, and it automatically changes it from a check to a bill payment.
Right. Yeah.
So
as long as the name is in use, as long as the vendor name is the same, then any bill that's unapplied will show up on that right drawer that expands over, and then you can apply it, add it to the bill, and then it immediately changes it. Exactly.
And then somebody wants to know, can you do that with payroll tax liability payments as well?
There is no. The short answer is no. There is a tool here in the so this is like an honorable mention tool in the client data review. Down here is it's find incorrectly paid liabilities. So this will allow you to easily find those checks that are written to it and then be able to correct it. And there's a good workflow about correcting them, through the pay liabilities and then offsetting the expenses, so you're creating a $0 liability check to be able to do that. But because it's a specific payroll transaction, it can't fix it automatically with the tool, but it will allow you to find them a lot faster. So it's going to be looking for checks that are written to the vendors in that you would normally pay your liabilities to be able to find those transactions faster.
Okay, and back on the cleaning up the payments, what if you have a journal entry? How does that apply?
If you have a journal entry, as long as it is the top line, you know, the accounts payable or accounts receivable is on the top line, then it should function just like any other type of transaction where you can apply the two. Sometimes you'll have a multi-line journal entry and accounts receivable or payable is somewhere buried in there. This gets into source and target when we're talking about that sort of thing. So it has to be the top line, which is the source line of the transaction, to have that functionality that we would normally want to see with accounts receivable or payable types of transactions. All right, then there's another one that's awesome, and I lost it because I scrolled. Where'd it go? Clearing up undeposited funds. This functions essentially the same way as applying payments to invoices and bill payments to bills, but this is just going through the undeposited funds account. So oftentimes, especially when you have a client who connects bank feeds, you know, they see downloaded transactions. This is a deposit. Oh, I'll just put it right to a sales or income account. So in this case, this is going to construction income. But they're breaking the workflow of invoice leading to payments, leading to deposits. So same thing here. We have a payment. It's going to sit in undeposited funds for all eternity until it gets deposited, but there already is a deposit that's in there. Typically what you'd have to do in the past is open up that deposit, change remove the sales revenue line off of it, and then apply the payment. So here you can do the exact same thing where you just check the two and apply it. Once you save it, it does that for you. Doesn't impact anything with the reconciliations again, and it corrects your overstating. So it's just a great tool to be able to fix a lot of clients' bad work, I guess is the best way to say it. They mean well, right? I mean, it is a deposit and it is income, but that's kind of superseding all of the other things that they're doing and making more work for yourself. Then the next one I want to go into is the fix sales tax payments. Again, this is an easy tool. When you're using sales tax, again, tax payments is a special kind of check inside of QuickBooks, a special kind of transaction type, so it has design functionality tied to it. A check written to the State Board of Equalization that goes to sales tax payable does not have the same impact or functionality as a tax payment that is doing the same thing. So in this case, we had a couple checks that were written to the State Board of Equalization, and they should be tax payments. So in order to have the same functionality, they need to be tax payments. And normally that involves, deleting this transaction, the check transaction, which now, if it's been reconciled, now changes the reconciliation. You have to do a mini reconciliation in order to re-reconcile that transaction. And then recreate the transaction as a tax payment and then go re-reconcile it again. This will do all of that in just one fell swoop. So once it's found, it tells you here, this will void the regular check and replace them with sales tax checks. The check number, the date, the cleared status is going to be retained, and it will go right to sales tax payable. So just voiding and replacing, and that's it. You're done. So that is a big win, for that to happen. Michelle,
yes, because I don't know how many times You know, I've seen clients do that. Like, you're looking at their balance sheet and they have all this sales tax payable on there, but then you look on the P&L and they have state tax expense because they've been writing a check and paying it over there as an expense, you know. So this is a cool tool and does save a lot of time.
Exactly. And each of these tools has a very robust, how does this work? So anytime that you had a question in the desktop, if you click on the how does it work, well, that's not very helpful. But let me go into another one here.
And so while you're doing that, Dan, somebody says fix undeposited funds and fix the sales tax payment. Is that only in enterprise? No, those are part of the client data review tools. There's like 13 tools in desktop. They're all part of CDR, client data review. So you only have a few of them in QuickBooks Online at this point. We're hoping to get more, but you have all of those tools in CDR when you're using it as the external accountant, in QuickBooks Desktop Accountant, and in QuickBooks Enterprise.
Yeah, the only time you don't have all of those tools is when you are logged in as the external accountant in a client's Pro or Premier. You don't have every tool that's in the CDR itself, but you do have a lot of them. So if you find that there's a tool missing, that's the case of, okay, well, I need your company file for a second, or if you bring your laptop that has the accountant edition, you restore it in your accountant edition to have all those tools. But the how this works fills in a lot of the back end, what it actually does. So any tool that you log into that has that how does this works tool, it will bring up just the information about that particular tool to get a little more information about the tool itself. In the CDR itself, or the client data review, you have notes that you can take for every particular task, and then you can also specify that it's in progress. So it's a great way to just kind of work through reviewing a client's books in general. Even if if you're not doing all of these things, it's a good checklist to kind of work with. Now, the next one we want to talk about is a troubleshooting inventory, because that is a big, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just a Pandora's box sometimes for a lot of people, where it's, I don't want to necessarily get into that sort of thing. But this is going to allow you to show items that fell below zero quantities and be able to correct those things. So you have the ability to filter by, if you just want to see the the items that fell in negative, that have a negative quantity, then you would just uncheck these. If your quantity built versus bought is zero. So these are assembly items. So these will allow you to get rid, to correct these things. Because negative quantity is just, it's a bad idea. And it's not a situation that you want to get into. So if you do have an item that did go negative, then you want to correct that. And it's very easy to do that, because then it just gives you the point of adjusting the value of inventory on hand. You can get to the inventory adjustment screen right there, put in your adjustment date so that it doesn't fall negative during that time. And then QuickBooks then is much, much more happier with regards to negative inventory.
Yeah, and Dan, let me just add to that. So if you close that window, down in the bottom right corner, do you see where it says alert if it's negative inventory as of a certain date? You don't just want to know if it's negative inventory at year end. You want to know if it was negative inventory at any time during the period. So anytime during the year did we go to negative inventory, because when you have negative inventory, like Dan says, it messes things up. It actually can get the cost of goods sold wrong, because it tries to guess what the cost should be, or when you do an invoice, there may not be any cost of goods sold associated with it at all. So you really want to, when you're looking for negative inventory, change that down the bottom right to at any time during the range.
Yeah, and it'll give you the negative quantity alert here if it ever did that, so you can kind of drill in on the valuation detail to see when it went negative, and then you can just make that adjustment for that one item if you needed to.
Well, and sometimes all you have to do is change the date. They may have sold, they may not have gotten the inventory, the bill for the inventory entered on time or something like that. So you may just have to change the date of the purchase to make it before the sale. Sometimes that's all you have to do to fix it. But yes, clicking on that over there to see the history so you can see what happened, and then you can drill down to a transaction if you need to change the date, because a lot of times that's all you have to do.
Yeah, and this isn't just an enterprise feature. Again, this is something that as long as you have a inventory turned on, this tool should be there in the client data review.
This is an awesome tool. I know it looks like really overwhelming, but this was one of the tools that we helped with when I was on the accountant posse. And you know, it was really hard when it comes to troubleshooting inventory because there's so many different things that can be wrong. So I thought the engineers came up with a pretty good way to do this to help us find things and stuff. So I think it's an awesome tool. If you have clients with inventory, you definitely want to use this to help you look for things.
Somebody asked a question about, does QB for Mac have any of these? And unfortunately, no, because there's not an accountant edition for Mac, but they can send you their Macintosh file. You can bring it into your Windows version, and then you can run these tools, and then send it back to them after that. So it's a round tripping type of issue where you gotta get the file from them, bring it into your Windows version, run your client data review, and then back to the client.
So here's a good question quickly. Somebody says they're using TeamViewer to remotely get into the client's computer. Does Desktop have a way to do this without TeamViewer? They used to have something, but that's gone now, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, they used to have a partnership with WebEx. Where it was the QuickBooks Remote Desktop. You could set it up as a client for either the full computer access or just QuickBooks. But that was, I think, this back in 2014 or so was when they dissolved that partnership. They just people weren't adopting it as much as they had hoped. All right, we're going to just end the webinar, and thank you all for joining us here. Sorry about the technical issues that we had, but these things are going to be available for review. Hopefully the sound gets cleared up a little bit, but we'll see how the recording turns out. Hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for joining us.